The NATO alliance will gather in Washington, D.C. to celebrate its 75th anniversary of the founding of the alliance. And they're going to do everything they can to show this strength, this unity of effort, and this positive things going forward, that they're going to continue well on into the future to provide security for the alliance. And just everything we'll be celebrating. Obviously, 75th is always a big issue for anything. But there are fractures underneath the surface, even now, that's going to make that show of unity much more brittle than it's going to appear. There are bigger issues even with that underneath the surface of what the alliance even stands for anymore, whether it can be successful, whether instead of bringing peace, it's bringing the opposite of peace and laying the foundations for the potential war, as the very opposite of what it's supposed to be, just to keep us all safe. Those things are going to be on display here. And while everyone in the Western media probably is going to be talking about all the positive things, they'll just be repeating what the leaders say. We're going to give you the real story, because everything about our channel here is not just a deep dive to show you what's happening around, but give you the context of it. And I'm going to tell you things today that they're not going to tell you in just a few days from now that have significant implications for American national security and for European security writ large. So first of all, I want to start with some of the fractures. Now, people have been hearing some about part of this with Viktor Orban, the leader of Hungary, who just went to, first of all, to Kiev this past week to talk to Volodymyr Zelensky. He then went to Moscow to talk with Russia. He is currently the acting president of the European Union, and he's caused lots of friction already between some of the people in the European Union. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first of all, I want to look at one of the things that he's been saying in his public comments, and it missed a lot of people in the United States, because just on Friday, on the 5th of July, he published a piece in Newsweek, which didn't get much notoriety because everybody was paying attention to the President Biden's interview on ABC News, and that sucked up all the oxygen. But this is a big thing here, and we need to pay a lot of attention to this. The title, as you can see on the screen there, is "The Point of NATO is Peace, Not Endless War." This is what he wrote. And in it, he said, "It is worth remembering that the most successful military alliance in world history started as a peace project, and its future success depends on its ability to maintain peace. But today, instead of peace, the agenda is the pursuit of war. Instead of defense, it is offense. All of this runs counter to NATO's founding values." And that is crucial to understand, that that's where he's coming from, because he has been very clear and very outspoken that he is seeking the most rational path. He's derided very often in the European media, and certainly in the United States major media, as being a right-wing, quote, pro-Putin leader in the West. But when you listen to what he actually says, and when you read that article, you see that he is very sober-minded and very clear about what he wants to accomplish. He's also very clear about what can be accomplished by NATO and by this war that's being supported by the West in Ukraine against Russia. Now, it made a lot of waves when he went to Russia, because many people in the West like to say, you can't talk to Russia. You can't believe anything they say. They're nothing but evil. It's Putin is the same as Hitler. He's just the new manifestation of it. And my God, they're going to go all the way to the West if he wins here. We have to make sure that they lose, etc. We've heard that for 2.5 years now. None of that is true. Russia has no interest in going to the West, and you don't have to take anybody's word for it. You don't have to trust them, because they don't have the military capacity to do so. But Viktor Orban gave an interview to a reporter. I think it was on his plane ride back from Moscow, when they were asking him, point blank, why are you talking to Vladimir Putin, and can he be trusted? Here's what he had to say.
He's more than 100% a rational person. When he negotiates, when he starts to explain a point, when he makes a proposal, saying yes or no, he's super rational. How to say in Hungarian, cool-blooded, cool-blooded, low profile, cool-blooded, very cautious, punctually formation, discipline. So it's a real challenge to have a negotiation and to be prepared if you would like to keep the intellectual and political level of him.
So in his view, he's a tough negotiator, but he's rational. So he can be dealt with on the facts. And the facts that Viktor Orban operates from, he views, are also very calculated and also very rational. Now, he laid out very clearly in, I think it was December of 2023, why he holds the position that we need to have a negotiated settlement because this war cannot be won by the West.
Really think there is no chance of Ukraine winning?
That's
and
my
surely point. They stand very little chance of winning without the aid which you are currently blocking.
No, my position is that looking at the reality, looking at the figures, looking at the surroundings, looking at the fact that NATO is not ready to send troops, it's obvious that there is no victory for poor Ukrainians on the battlefield. That's my position.
And that is definitely not the position of NATO. NATO has welded themselves, probably is a better way to put it, to the fact that Ukraine has to win and that Russia has to lose. The problem is, as Viktor Orban rationally and logically laid out, you cannot accomplish that objective. It's great that you want Ukraine to win and that you want Russia to lose. Everybody can have whatever opinion and desire that they want, but it matters a lot what you can and cannot accomplish. And NATO seems to be divorced from that reality. And they have been putting a lot of pressure. And if I had the time, we would have pulled up some clips from some of the British leaders, also from 2023, first from previous Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the current one, Keir Starmer. When he was a member of parliament, they had a discussion on the floor, and they both said they are absolutely locked in to Russia has to lose, Ukraine has to win, and that's what we're going to go forward with it. So NATO has been going in that direction. Obviously, President Biden is in the same category there. They've been talking about that from the beginning. But when Hungary has been going on this path that they're not going to do that, there came to be a near schism in it. And so Orban finally was so firm in not providing weapons to the Ukraine side because he feels that that's just extending the war and it won't have any possibility of success. He finally negotiated something with the Secretary General Stoltenberg saying that, hey, we're not going to be a part of this. And so to keep an actual schism from happening, Stoltenberg said this.
Prime Minister Orban has made it clear that Hungary will not participate in these NATO efforts, and I accept this position. And I'm glad that today the Prime Minister and I have agreed on modalities for Hungary's non-participation in NATO support to Ukraine. No Hungarian personnel will take part in these activities, and no Hungarian funds will be used to support them.
Now, he tried to put as good a face on it as he could, but Stoltenberg can't cover the fact that who's running that show is Viktor Orban, because he is very sharply focused on what he views as the best interest of his country. Now, I know a lot of people have different views on Viktor Orban, on some of his other policies, whether it's domestic or regional policies. We're not going to talk about any of that. People can have whatever the opinion they want. But on this issue, he is absolutely on rock solid ground, and NATO is on mud. Probably is the best that you can say what they're having there. And they're trying to put a good face on it. And I think that they just want to keep going with the impression that everything's okay. So instead of saying the obvious that there's a big issue and an irreconcilable positions between the two sides, they just tried to paper it over, just saying it doesn't exist or it's fine, he can go ahead and deal with it. Anyway, moving over here. But the United States is unfortunately just as bad as NATO is on this, and we're also supporting something that is completely unattainable militarily. And our Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, alongside the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Kuleba, talking about, this was back in April, but are talking about the event in Washington that's going to happen in a few days from now, said this.
Ukraine will become a member of NATO. Our purpose at the summit is to help build a bridge to that membership. and to create a clear pathway for Ukraine moving forward. We will see, I think, in the summit, very strong support for Ukraine going forward in its relationship with NATO.
You know, unfortunately, I'm afraid he probably is right. Probably next week, you're going to see a lot of these statements of unified support. Well, not unified. As we just showed you, it's not going to be unified, but at least of the people who were there, there's going to be talk of lots of unity and support for that. But folks, look, we got to just recognize this is why there was a war, because of NATO coming into Ukraine. This is what started. It's been on a slow burn since 2008 when the NATO in Bucharest summit said, yes, Georgia and Ukraine will be in NATO. That's what lit the fuse. And it was on a slow burn. It started burning a little bit in Georgia in 2008. It burned pretty significantly in Ukraine in 2014, resulting in the loss of Crimea and in the split between the Luhansk and Donetsk provinces in eastern Ukraine. Started basically an 8-year civil war that started at that point. And now it's continued on through now nearly 2.5 years of open warfare. So everything that we've done in that regard has just backfired completely. It didn't protect Ukraine. Talking about having them in NATO only spawned the war. And now then you're going to talk at this point when Orban's trying to actually find a peaceful solution, because that's what he went first of all to Kiev and then to Moscow, because he's trying to bridge the two sides together and saying, is there any place that we can do to talk about peace? But nobody in Europe wants to talk about peace. Not in NATO, not in the European Union. This tweet here, I think I actually just pulled it earlier today. I'm sorry, yesterday I pulled this, where you see that many in the European Union are just in complete meltdown, according to this author here. And Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Union, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, have both attacked the sovereign right of Hungary to have an independent foreign policy. They say, how dare you want to go and talk to Russia? And this, and certainly it's no surprise, and it's no coincidence that Viktor Orban chose the moment to go to Moscow when he was the acting president of the European Union. It's a rotating presidency, and it was his turn. So you can be sure that that was absolutely designed. And part of me wonders if he desires for there to be a split. I don't know what his full intentions are, but he is definitely trying to use all of the motivation and media support that he can get as his position here, knowing for sure it's going to get a lot. But he is just convinced that this is the right path to go down because it's the only one that can have any success. He's not the only one. So if it was only Hungary, that would be one thing, but he's a stalwart. But it's also another NATO ally, Slovakia, and their leader, Fico, who just amazingly in May had 4 shots put into him by an attempted assassin. And now then in his very first appearance after that, and it's a remarkably short period of time for him to be back on his feet and talking after he was nearly murdered. He says, and this was in the Kiev Independent, I think also on Saturday, I want to express my admiration for the Hungarian Prime Minister for not hesitating to visit Kiev and Moscow. If my health had allowed me to travel, I would gladly have joined him. There are not enough, I repeat, not enough peace talks, peace initiatives. And therein is the real issue here. And certainly there are many in the West, in the United States. I'm one of them. I have plenty of the others on our show here who tell you that there is a path to a negotiated settlement. There could have been one the second month of the war, second or third month of war, May or April of 2022. There's been other opportunities since then. Putin laid out another possibility for a negotiated settlement just a month or so ago. On the eve of the Swiss summit that didn't include Russia, which is ridiculous. Why the West wants to have a negotiation where the other half of the conflict isn't even invited. So how can you even have the possibility of a success? See, that's what underscores the ridiculousness of what we're doing and why so many more people are starting to not take us seriously. Because they see that when someone does something rational and they lay out a very cogent, rational, logical path or justification for why they're doing something, Orban and Fico, why is it that the rest of the West won't operate in that same way? If the West was saying, we're going to continue to support Ukraine because we think there's a path to success, and here it is. If this happens, if that happens, if this other development occurs, then these resources and these funds can get us there. So here's the ends, and here's the means to get us to the end. That doesn't exist. If that existed, then there might be some case to be made. And maybe it's just saying, okay, well, we'll see if it works out. Nothing's guaranteed in life, but we're on this path. But instead, we don't do that. And you're not going to hear that from NATO tomorrow. In fact, what we have been hearing of late is that NATO wants to just say, hey, let's keep giving Ukraine a bunch of stuff for another year and see what happens. Let's have another full year of giving them ammunition and weapons, and then we'll figure out the next year what we're going to do after that. Do you know how irrational that is? And illogical to say that there's this war that someone even like me from this far away can give you very graphic, dramatic, physical evidence to why Ukraine cannot win, and it's almost incontrovertible. Why NATO is going to ignore all that and just say, we're just going to keep giving them some stuff. Basically, we're going to keep the fire burning for another year, but they're not going to provide any kind of a path to how that support is going to contribute to any identifiable objective. That's one of the things that drives me so crazy, and obviously to other people as well, because Russia would be fine to end this war. Despite the caricature that's made in the West, Vladimir Putin is not on some kind of bloodlust and he just wants to conquer Ukraine for no good reason. He just wanted to attack them, even though that's what we claim. It's absurd. It's at face value, it's absurd. They've been unambiguous for 15 years exactly what the issues is, and he's been saying since before the war started and all the way through, to include this week, what his conditions are to end the war, because he wants to end the war. He doesn't even want to capture all of Ukraine, much less anything else. So when you hear the West side talking about how he's, we have to stop him, or he's going to go, I don't know, to the English Channel, who knows what they're actually saying. I don't think they've even given that enough thought. There's no capacity for Russia to do that at this point. They don't have a big enough army. They don't have their industry is mobilized for the special military operation that they call, but not for all-out mobilized war. As one Russian expert recently explained to me, the difference in the domestic situation in Russia, it can get significantly more. They're devoting a considerable portion of their industrial capacity to support this level of war that they're fighting. But if it turned into an all-out war, then there would be a massive mobilization of personnel and industry. And we haven't seen that, but it could come later. The point being that if Russia had those designs, then there are things they could do that would make that a plausible outcome, and something that we might actually have to defend against. But at this point, everything they have and everything they're projecting is only to have these limited military objectives attained. That's the critical part. Again, if you're looking at the facts, if you're looking at what's really on the ground, then there is no support for what the NATO side is doing. So instead of following Orban and Fico's lead and saying, let's do something that's plausible, rational, and logical, they're staying on the path of doing something that's irrational, illogical, and has no chance of success. But that's where we're going to end up going here. And let's look at some of the other consequences of this. So we wanted to isolate Russia. Secretary of Defense Austin famously said at the first of this that one of our objectives is to harm Russia, to weaken Russia. Even though, how do you even quantify that? How do you count that? What are the metrics that show whether that's successful or not? Don't worry about that. We're not going to bother with it. We just want to hurt Russia. So if throwing a bunch of weapons and ammo into Ukraine kills a bunch of Russian, blows up a bunch of stuff, I guess that's success, because that's as far as we get with it. And we don't think much further with that, which I guess you could say is a continuation of what's about to happen on the NATO summit here in a few days, because they're going to say they want to provide another year's worth of support and supplies with no path to where it's going to accomplish anything. But they're also graphically failure in isolating Russia. So we thought, first of all, in the economic sphere, that we would crush their economy. That's what Biden said so much at the beginning of this war, that these, unprecedented, never before seen sanctions are going to ruin the Russian economy, bring them to their knees, etc. Not only did it not happen, they're now growing faster than Europe. So they have not been just broken down. They found new outlets. They found new markets for their products. And so as a result, they're actually stronger and now less susceptible to Western sanctions. So the levers which we thought would bring them down have now lost a lot of their impetus because Russians were forced to find other outlets, which they did because there are plenty of people in the world willing to do that. And we see that on graphic display right now. So Russia has just, in fact, on Monday, not coincidentally, I think, to coincide with right about when the NATO summit is going to start. That starts on Tuesday, I believe, officially. The Indian Prime Minister Modi will be meeting with Putin. This is on the heels of Russia just going to Vietnam. And they started, they signed a number of economic agreements there. Putin went to North Korea, where they signed military agreements. And now then more and more treaty kind of alliances where they have mutual defense agreements and certainly lots of ammunition and weapons exchanges in either direction. Obviously, things continue to get better with Russia and China. They're getting closer and closer together with Putin meeting Xi Jinping, with him meeting Kim Jong-un, which you're seeing on the screen right there. The Putin is also doing lots of work with Iran. Look, everywhere you want to look, they continue to expand their influence and abilities abroad. The Russian Navy, several Navy ships just went to Cuba to where they were conducting some operations just off the United States shore. They actually went to Venezuela a couple of days ago. I think it was on the 2nd of July. They posted there. So they're getting closer and closer with them too. They're making many inroads in the Middle East. They've been there for a while, and now they're making expansion in other areas like Syria and some of the other regions in that area as well. In Africa, throughout the continent, they've actually driven exchanged. Some countries have exchanged American forces for Russian forces, and their expansion is continuing on there. Don't you see the bigger picture here? Russia is continuing to expand its influence. It is strengthening its connection with other of our erstwhile adversaries. Everything that we wanted to accomplish is having the opposite effect. We're getting weaker. Our arsenals are diminishing. Russia's are increasing. Their influence is increasing. Their vulnerability to Western sanctions is decreasing. The opposite, folks, listen to me. The opposite of everything we claim to want to accomplish is we're getting instead losses. We are seeking something that can't be attained on the battlefield in Ukraine. We're seeking to minimize economically the impact that Russia's having. There is strengthening. We're seeking to limit diplomatically Russia, to isolate them. They're expanding. And our credibility is shrinking because people around the world see this. That's why you see literally every area of the world that our reputation is suffering harm. And of course, I'm not even talking about what's going on in the United States right now with our president and the next upcoming presidential election. It's not clear that President Biden is even going to remain in office in between now and the election, much less win the election. And if it's President Trump, if he returns to office here, he is unequivocal and unambiguous that he's going to seek a negotiated settlement like Viktor Orban. Viktor Orban went to meet him actually in Mar-a-Lago not long ago. So we know that that's likely going to happen. And everybody else in the world understands that that's going to happen too. So when they see all of this nonsense in NATO and waving the flags and saying, yay, how great we are, and they know that if President Biden doesn't win, then everything that they're talking about there can be undone within a matter of months. That's what's going on here. And so people around the world are aware of that. It is time, folks, for us to stop being stupid. I mean, I can't say it any nicer than that. I could probably say it more accurately than that, but I want to keep it PG. But we've got to stop being stupid and self-harming our own interest and cutting our own knees out from under. This is not Russia doing stuff to us. This is us doing it to ourselves. We keep pressing China. I could go on in that direction as well, even outside of the NATO issue, on this whole China-Taiwan issue and the one China policy that we've had forever. And we keep seeming to trying to erode that as well and to give Taiwan reason to think that it can go into independence and to just keep trying to poke a stick in China's eye. All of these things we keep trying to do, and they're all backfiring. China is now stronger than it's been in my certainly lifetime, and definitely since 1991. And the chances of them being able to successfully take Taiwan is now higher than it's been at any time. So all the weapons that we've provided, all these diplomatic overtures, like when Nancy Pelosi went over there, et cetera, all these things, all of them have backfired. And one of the things President Biden said in his interview with ABC News on Friday night was he said, "I'm running the world. We're the indispensable nation, and so we can do whatever we want." Basically, is the implication, and the rest of the world knows it's just nonsense. The rest of the world sees right through that. But if we keep that mentality and actually act on it, and it appears that we are, then folks, we are setting ourselves up for disaster. Because if you have this arrogant assumption that you're the indispensable nation and the most powerful nation on the history of on the planet, in the history of the world, as President Biden says too many times, then you see that you could take actions which could one day expose just how untrue that really is. And listen, that's not just to demean anything or saying that we're not powerful. We genuinely are a very powerful nation. We could have a very peaceful and long-term secure future and deal with folks all over the world, in the Indo-Pacific, in the Middle East, in Africa, in South America. I mean, literally all over the place, Europe, even with Russia. We could do that from a position of strength. If we just had just this much humility and just a little bit more of wisdom, all of these things are possible. We could have something better in NATO by saying we're actually going to just talk about defending what we have instead of looking to expand in the Indo-Pacific and to expand, closer to Russia, which is just going to ignite potentially another fire. That's what we should be doing. That's what we can do. And I pray to God that we're going to have that, something is going to change, whether people are watching this show, whether other people independently are coming to the same recognition, and that people put a break on a lot of this nonsense when they see just how graphically it's failed. And I want to leave you with that, because that's the most important point to understand. This is a radical failure for our interests. You keep going down this path of saying, no, I'm blindly going to go forward and try to make sure that Russia loses. I'm blindly going to just keep going in all these different directions of expanding everything and poking a finger in everybody's eye, and it'll never have anything bad, is wrong and dangerous. And one of these days, we could find ourselves in a catastrophic war we should never have fought and may not be able to win. That's how serious this is, folks. And I just will continue until that day happens to make shows like this, to do everything I can to expand our voice. And I count on you guys to help us out, to expand this, to get this to as many ears as we can, so people see there is a rational path that we can follow, or an irrational one that can lead to our harm. That's where we're at. Thank you very much for watching this. Again, I do ask you to like and subscribe to our channel so you get all this, because we're going to remain unintimidated and uncompromised to bring you the truth of whatever's going on, so that you know genuinely what's happening. Thank you very much, and we will see you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.